Hello, I'm Rick Harsh, here for what's likely to be a somewhat combative interview. I'm the editor of Corona Samizdat and associate producer at Isosi Productions, the Corona Samizdat organization's film branch, which will be putting a film out sometime in the next few months. We'll see. Anyway, I'm being interviewed by an anonymous interviewer, concerned citizen, and human person. There. Or maybe I'm not. I don't know, because he isn't asking any questions.
So we're
With force. Ask with force.
yeah. So what makes you worth listening to regarding this issue?
Okay. I like that question. It's as if I wrote it myself. What makes me worth listening to? First and foremost, every single human being who's appalled at what's going on is worth listening to. And so, also, I guess I haven't organized this in my mind, this question, even though I admittedly knew it was coming. I've studied history for 50 years almost, and I've written a lot of novels and some nonfiction, and I've written a lot about politics, and I've been very critical of the main partner of Israel, the United States, and so these are things that I just know a lot about. I've read a lot about, and you'll probably get more. You won't get any less horror than some nun who sees this and goes screaming down the street. This is a fucking nightmare. There should be more of that. Everybody should be doing this. First time I used that argument was one day when I just really thought about nuclear war, and I thought, why the fuck aren't we out on the streets every day screaming, destroy the nuclear weapons? But, people get used to things. And that's a characteristic of the human being that makes us easily manipulated and complicit even with the most evil things that happen in our world. So, does that make me worth listening to?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
good.
you're on record saying the Levant should go back to the Ottoman borders. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I believe that the solution, there's no, it's a one-state solution, and it returns all of historical Palestine to the Palestinians, and it removes the Israelis from the Levant. The Israelis need to be given the right to return and then get their asses kicked back to where they came from, wherever it may be. Those who I think one person who heard this argued that, well, the Ottomans were really good with the Jews, and I think I would not want a Middle East without Jews, but can we put the Kuwait or the Iraqi Jews? Can we give them a little slum in Baghdad maybe? A few settlers can be given villages, not settlers, no more settlers, but some Jews who would like to remain and can make a good argument. Maybe there would be a commission. Who can remain? They can remain in little villages, kibbutzim, if you like, you could call them. And they could remain, scattered throughout, not just the Levant, but Lebanon. The Golan Heights, I think, maybe should be forbidden because, they've broken way too many laws in that regard. I only took notes for this one question because I knew it was coming. So the one point I want to make right away is that the the Holocaust has nothing to do with this issue whatsoever. The Holocaust started for the Palestinians, the Nakba, as they would rather call it, but it's Holocaust and catastrophe can be used interchangeably, I think. The Holocaust has nothing to do with this. The Holocaust for the Palestinians started with, well, practically with the Balfour Declaration, because that gave Zionists who'd been flirting with ideas like this the power, the authority to put into place what you might call the final crusade. And I don't say that lightly, because one question about all of this, the historical question, how far back can we go in history? Well, I think if we go back to the Crusades, I think that ended. The Crusade period of history was over. There is no defining moment. There is no line that people crossed and said, okay, we put the Crusades behind us. Some people have crusading in their intestines. It's just something they'll always do. But this Zionist crusade is outside of the whatever flow of history that there is. You may also ask, well, what about the fact that I want to go back to Ottoman borders? Well, I live in Istria, and there's a border in Istria between Croatia and Slovenia. And the border is subject to some controversy. It's a controversial border. The Croatians got a hell of a lot more sea than the Slovenes did. And you'd think that, they could have given a little more, right? Well, this was settled based on a approximately 1910 census done by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And they really didn't give a shit. Politically, they didn't care where the Slovenes and Croatians were along what is now the border. They did it in what to them at the time was a logical way, and even Slovene historians have said, yeah, that's true. That's one way of looking at it. So I think that going back to the time before the Palestinians were fucked or victimized, however way you want to put it, is the most sensible way to do it. The Ottomans, I don't think, really cared where the Lebanese and the Palestinians were, and so they probably had a reasonable regional scheme. And I think you can find maps. They didn't have strict borders, just as they didn't have one here. But I think, Palestinians lived here, and there were mixtures and so on. You even had Jews, but nobody gives a shit. Nobody gave a shit then, and nobody should give a shit now. If I'm going through the future Palestine, and I come to a village and find out it's filled with Jews, I would expect that my diet might change while I stayed there. But I expect that, like most desert people in the modern era, without a political grudge, and they wouldn't have one or they couldn't stay, I think I'd be treated very well. There was probably a fantastic culture brewing in places like that. Nobody should have given them a political writ, but they got the political writ from the Holy Book. And all I want to say about the Holy Book is, if you think that the Bible gives you the right to a piece of land, I think you should read the Mahabharata and talk to some Hindus about Kurukshetra. So that's not an issue at all. The last thing I want to say, and I think I've made it clear that Israel as a state, Zionists, Israel, does not belong in the 21st century community of nations. They started out with lies and thievery, and the lies never stopped, the thievery never stopped, the brutal methods never stopped. They've violated international laws, and they've kept violating them. They even built nuclear weapons and committed international crimes to keep that secret. So I think that they've basically, it's their recidivism is their political recidivism has the horrible 3 strikes and you're outlaw in the United States. I think Israel has the 72. Choose your numbers carefully, Rick. 70 or 72 strike law. And finally, last point I'll make is in Accra, Ghana today, African nations met about what do you call it when you return money to people you've harmed? There are too many RE words, but I think it's one of them. They want to be given money using that one word. I could make it more clear and more quickly, but my brain's going. But it's sharp on the Levant. So they talked about the reasons why colonialism has done so much damage that it's currently fucking them. It has fucked them since it supposedly ended. It created fucked societies and did so much damage that they believe that they deserve to be given that R word that I can't think of. Compensation, maybe? Compensation. Recompense. Yeah, maybe it's compensation. Do you think it's compensation?
Retribute, yeah.
So, but where else do we hear this argument made? India? Yeah, that'll never happen. The British still think what they did in India was a good thing. But they're fucking idiots. South Africa was another one. Well, this is the chance for human beings, for political human beings, to finally right a historical wrong through action rather than by looking back and saying, oh, that was a bad idea. I mean, everybody knows it was a bad idea. Not everybody is willing to admit that they know that, but they know. This is, you cannot go to a place where people live and say, well, but we're fucking Mormons, and we need our Mormosity, assuaged. And, in the Mormon Holy Book, there's a place in New Jersey. And, and so suddenly the Mormons want New Jersey. You think they're going to get it? No fucking way. So anyway, that's it for my notes. And so I don't need to read anymore. This is one of those old-fashioned interviews. We don't have William F. Buckley, but we've got Orson Leland Buckwheat here. So, Orson?
So, so if I understand correctly, you believe that Israel is not a legitimate state.
Absolutely.
But the reality is that Israel does exist. So how do we solve the problem? How do we solve the
How do we get rid of them?
the conflict?
How do we get rid of them?
Also, I mean,
Well, the conflict can be solved by enough nations saying we are willing to go to war and put your nukes aside. I can't really say in a realistic way how it would happen. I don't want Iran to get involved. I think the country most likely to use a nuclear weapon in the world today in conflict, even though the United States has been the only one to use them and has more often than any other nuclear nation had people in government wanting to do it. Right now, I think the Israelis are the only nation psychotic enough to use a nuclear weapon. So practically, once the war stops, and I don't have an answer to that, I really don't. But once it stops, start thinking like an Israeli. How would an Israeli do it? Bulldozers? You know, um, I think I would trust more than myself. I would trust um, um, one of the human rights organizations that has the best track record um, with truth to come up with a plan. I mean, we have so many refugees because there's so much shit that's been done by the West. Um, how many refugees would? How many people live in Israel? Do you know?
I think it's around 10 millions, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well, they can be absorbed. I mean, you got the Nakba. You got people who are being removed, and one of the evils that puts me over the edge is, first of all, bombing civilians and then dropping leaflets saying we're going to bomb you if you don't go south, bombing them while they're going south, bombing them in the south, and then now, what was it, yesterday, more leaflets are being dropped in Khan Yunis where these people are already thinking, my God, another Nakba. Now they're getting a third Nakba. They're being told to leave Khan Yunis. Where the fuck are they going to go? To Rafah. The Egyptians are not going to just say, okay, come on in. And so what are the Israelis going to do? They're not going to stop. They're going to bomb them. They're going to bomb the shit out of the area from Khan Yunis to Rafah. And they're going to say, it's a humanitarian crisis. Somebody's got to solve this. And they're already working on bribing Egypt, So it's a really it's a hideous example of ethnic cleansing.
So there is no doubt the Palestinians are on the receiving end of all kinds of abuse in this conflict, but do they have any responsibility for the current situation?
None.
None.
None, because in every case where they have been compliant and they've been screwed, in every case where Palestinians, Hamas, between 2005 and 2010, on at least 7 occasions, Hamas let it be known that they were willing to agree. They have this charter, but they never use it. And so the Israelis have intentionally, on several occasions, since they pulled out from Gaza themselves, they have created a situation that provoked Hamas and allowed them, as if anything could stop them, to go in and bomb. And so this 10 years has been punctuated by periodic strikes. They do things like what was it in 2018 or 19, the peaceful protest from Palestine. They shot protesters. They like to shoot in the ankles. It's a well-documented fact. So I don't know where the Palestinians are. I mean, if you treat people the way that they're treated, you are going to have chickens coming home to roost, as the saying goes, in the form of suicide bombs and events like October 7th. They're inevitable. And everybody who thinks it through knows that what's going on now is only going to create um, a worse future, more hatred, more power for the next Hamas or this Hamas. Probably, I don't know how they can get rid of this Hamas. They don't even know who it is. So, I mean, they went into a hospital yesterday and took out 200 blindfolded, naked young men to beat the shit out of them and make them say things that they will now spread through the West and, typical IDF propaganda.
Okay, that's all for now.
That's all for now.
Yeah.
You don't have any more questions? Come on.
I mean, so.
So you agree?
What? So I'm the interviewer. I don't have an opinion.
Oh, no,
So-
of course, the interviewer always has an opinion.
So, what does Hamas represent to you? What is Hamas?
Opposition to Zionism.
So, do you feel that that Hamas, considering everything that happened, do you feel like Hamas has had the right to target unarmed civilians like they did on October the 7th?
Well, they had the internationally, I mean, by international law, they had the right, but I'm not in favor of civilians being killed. But, if you go through U.S. history, there were occasionally Native American tribes that slaughtered settlers. And but the Israelis learned from that. What they learned is to send the army with the settlers and to arm the settlers, so that the settlers are like, it's like they're like 50 John Waynes against a population of infants.
Okay, I think.
You think what? Come on, let's have a little conversation here.
I mean,
Don't hold back.
I'm not holding back, but I think